Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Esri Federal Webinar Technical Series. This technical webinar series was designed specifically for federal government professionals who rely on Esri's ArcGIS technology. The series has a total of 5 webinars that you won't want to miss. Each webinar can be found at the URL that you will see shortly in the chat. If you enjoyed this webinar and or would like to catch the rest of the series, be sure to register today. We've already had 2 of the webinars in this series, and this is the 3rd so far. Throughout the webinar, if you should have any questions, please feel free to submit them into the Q&A portion of the Zoom menu at the bottom. You may send in your questions at any time throughout the webinar. We will be collecting them and addressing them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. And we hope that you enjoy and get as much out of the presentation as possible. We would like to now introduce you to Andrew Turner, Director at Esri R&D in DC and CTO of ArcGIS Hub, and Emily Hu, Product Manager, Web Developer Technologies. Over to you, Andrew.
Great, thanks, Amy. Yeah, we're excited to be here to share our experience and our guidance for you on strategies for web development. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So what we're going to cover today is overall strategies and really ways to think about building with the ArcGIS platform, but also integrating with other services, data, applications, and user needs that you might be required to meet. Now, if you've been using ArcGIS at all, or even really a lot of emerging web technologies, it can feel like just a huge pot of different components and capabilities and functionality that you can kind of mix and match and play with. And it's really, especially right now, extremely exciting how the technology overall has been developing and really accelerating and making data and information accessible to more people through whatever device and tools they're using. But we also understand that it can be really confusing. It can feel like a lot of pieces and you're not really sure how they might all fit together. So what we want to do in this next hour together is really start pulling apart the system just a little bit so you can see a little bit how it works. How is it designed? How is it built? How do we at Esri build applications using the exact same developer APIs and SDKs and libraries that you have access to use, mix, reuse, and extend however you need to? Because ultimately, by understanding the system, by understanding how it works together, how it can be interoperable, the different APIs and libraries and SDKs, means that you can then be creative in building what it is that you need to build, but also make it maintainable, make it sustainable, make it forward-leaning, and make it easily extensible for your work and extension by other colleagues and partners. We also want to make sure that we've been building everything and then you know how to build for extensibility so that while you might build a specific application or workflow, that can be integrated into different systems or dynamically pull in additional data, services, or analytics without having to rebuild the whole thing. So we understand that often requirements are emerging, needs change, technology definitely changes. So you can design and build today quickly and efficiently for delivering that value to your users, but also extending for the future. So there's 4 big concepts that we're going to cover throughout this talk, and then we're going to dive through a lot of the different capabilities. So first, it's a tiered architecture. We talk about apps. These are web applications or mobile progressive web applications and so on. Those are then built with developer libraries that then take their data and information for different web services, whether they're ready to use services like geocoding or height and address lookups, to different data services, whatever they are, whether they're demographics, economic, location features, and so on. Now, within those, and what we pull apart just enough is that how even these developer libraries include components. These are reusable pieces of an application that you can just use in our configurable apps, or you can build your own and embed into those applications or build into your own applications. So it's interoperable and standardized, leveraging modern technologies. Now, we also have a really big paradigm concept in how we build the ArcGIS system, and that's the idea of declarative versus imperative. So imperative is writing the code and exact recipe of what you need to do, if-else statements and complex logic. Declarative is just saying, what do you want to look like in the end? With that, we with our applications, take a configuration-based approach. So this is how we build our applications and how we recommend you build your applications. It's why you can use one of our dashboards that's built and coded once, but build thousands or millions to configure those as different dashboards for different use cases and different data behind the scenes. And you can follow that same pattern. So you can build an application once, maintain that at its core, but allow active reuse and modification by your users. And then behind that, kind of the geographic special sauce that we all bring to this is the web map or web scene. This is a way to declare and define the data and the display of the information that you want to have in your application. So our recommendation as we walk through this is thinking about how you do configuration first, then you might do customization, and then you might develop custom code. That's the high-level core concepts. And as we go through the rest of this presentation, we'll dive into each of these sections. And at the end, we'll wrap up with really looking at how this high-level architecture really gets implemented through the ArcGIS system with a no-code approach, configuration, and then as you need to, custom coding. Because behind all of this is that concept of WebGIS, the idea that we want to make this data information as easily accessible through web technology, so it's distributed and federated. It's easy to access through whatever tools and applications people are using, whether it's an ArcGIS configured application, a custom application, or even leveraging those through third-party applications, dashboards, and analytical tools. So everything that we're going to be talking about here and everything in the whole series that you've heard mentioned really all works together. So this is going to cut one slice of the web development, but everything you heard with mobile runtime, even desktop and other services in Python, they're all part of a whole system. So as I mentioned, one of the first things you would do first is create a web map or web scene. So this is through our easy to use web map viewer in ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise that you have at your fingertips to rapidly add or remove data from yourself and your organization, from the public community, from Living Atlas, and so on, to bring those together and create a visual cartographic display, charts, tables. You can even bring in non-spatial data as part of that. And this is a way that supports thousands of different data sources and data types, open standards, emerging standards, to bring them together into a information-based display that fits your need, can bring in analytics and other things. So once you've configured that, it then behind the scenes, and this is started to pull apart the system, it behind the scenes is JSON, right? JavaScript object notation. This is just a way in which that we store this information of what you chose in the user interface as you add or removed operational layers and you provide color styling or analytics to those. Maybe you pulled in a 3D layer, maybe you change the base map and so on. Those are all stored as JSON. And that's really that declarative interface. We're not programming all of those layers together. We're instead just saying these are the layers that we want to use. This is the item and the URL that came from, and here's how they should be displayed and styled in this web map, which is why you can use one layer multiple times. So there's a huge array of functionality and capabilities in our web map and web scene specifications. These are specifications that we use to build our own application, and you're able to use in your configured apps, or even if you wanted to, you can customize and configure these, embed them into your own rendering applications, or even automate them. If you want to go really deep, you could write scripts or notebooks or other code that would actually generate or read and parse these web map specifications as well, if you want to do some really custom things also. So it's just a kind of a good piece to know what's behind the scenes on it and how we even take a declarative experience to building our applications. This JSON, obviously, is what we actually see, is rendered out as aesthetically beautiful, interactive, high quality, and ideally authoritative and accurate maps. Now, the accuracy is really up to using the right tools and methodologies, but once configured, then that becomes available and rendered through our viewers and different applications. So as I mentioned, this declarative-based configuration pulls together data layers, expressions we'll dive into in a second with arcade expressions, styling, and base maps. Those are then stored as an item in ArcGIS Online. And an item is, think about it as a kind of a web-based file that you can choose who to share that with, in terms of maybe just working on it by yourself, working with a group of people, sharing it to your organization or groups outside your organization, or maybe to the public. Now, once you configure that one web map or web scene, it is then reusable in many different ways. It can be embedded into different applications, configured applications like Experience Builder or Instant Apps or a dashboard or a hub, and you can reuse that same web map item in your own custom developed applications as well, as Emily will talk about in a few minutes. Now, that's really straightforward in terms of the concept that you bring together multiple layers into a web map and those are displayed and rendered. But we also understood that it's really necessary to often make more complex decisions around how data are displayed, how information is put up into pop-up windows or in tables. And that might require converting units, for example. It might require converting and creating charts or comparative analyses of the temperature is getting hotter or this value is lower than before. Now, you might be familiar with writing things like JavaScript code, but we couldn't embed JavaScript into our application because it becomes a security vulnerability. So we developed something called Arcade or Arcade. So this is an expression language for the WebGIS system. It looks like a lightweight JavaScript or Excel. It's meant to be really easy to understand. It's fairly natural language with a little bit of coding syntax. It's portable across the entire platform. So you can write an Arcade expression in the web map viewer, in an application, in Pro, and they'll work across the whole system. As I mentioned, from a security perspective, it's secure and sandboxed. So anything you do here is controlled. It can't access more information than would be allowed for that user. It can't run arbitrary scripts that would hack information or run too long. So it's really a safe way why we built this so that you can embed it into your applications to have really rich interactive experiences that you can trust. It's lightweight and fast. We have profiles that are loaded on each application, and you can use this code to do amazing things. So not just display of certain layers, but also things like geometric operations, geometric sets, feature sets, and so on. So this itself can be a whole slew of information you can dive into. This is just meant to be a survey for something to you to think about as you run into certain limitations of just saying, I want a graduated symbol based on a value. Maybe it's a complicated equation. You could probably generate that in Arcade. And just a hint for the future of where we're going later in this presentation is we now have generative AI-based assistants built in that are emerging that will even help you how to learn and write Arcade expressions that are really powerful and easy to create. So I talked about the first thing is configuring your web map. This is really that's the work that you're choosing which data to use and how it's portrayed, right? It's the analytical intelligence that you're bringing to how you want your application to work. Then let's talk about how the app itself gets created. You don't just want a web map, you want to maybe display it with a table and some charts and have some cross-interactivity. There's a range of ways that we recommend you go and build an application. First, we recommend configuration. This is the first step where you have an idea or some requirements. You can go in within a few minutes. Instant Apps was designed to be 5 minutes or less to create an application that leverages that same web map that's declarative based in terms of JSON configuration as an item, and then you can share that with your team or your partners or your executives or the public to use that information through that interface. But often you run into certain limitations. Maybe the Instant App doesn't provide you enough functionality, so you can move to one of our other configurable apps. Then maybe you just want to extend that with one custom widget or display, because maybe you have to access some payment system or some other data service that isn't built into our system, doesn't follow common standards. So you can build a custom widget to finally, you can then go build a fully custom application. And we really strongly recommend you think about this pattern where you can be sitting in a meeting or conversation with people and configuring an app, just playing with moving charts and tables around and a map around. And at the very least, that helps you refine requirements. Maybe that solves the problem in 5 minutes or less, and the person can walk away with that. And when they have a need, 2 weeks later, you modify that configuration and you update it for them. And then by the time you're moving to coding, you really have set those requirements. You know what you need to customize and configure, and you can dive into that one capability to really focus your energy there. So focus streamlined apps in the configuration down to a more effort and time if you have a really specific need. As Esri, we have a wide range of configurable apps and builders. So these range from apps you can configure in just a few minutes for very common use cases to more specific use cases that we call experiences. And finally to ArcGIS Hub, which really brings multiple applications and data together in a durable and reusable way. And these are all configuration web map based. So once you choose one configurable app, you're not stuck. You can leverage the similar configuration and definitely the web map and data behind the scenes to go deeper and deeper and maybe even make multiple applications that serve different use cases and users with the exact same web map. So each of these different apps is definitely worth exploring. They're all included with ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise. So you can go and just play with these. We're going to give you a quick survey of them, but nothing beats you going and spending 5-10 minutes and just clicking around and seeing what you can build very quickly, and then reading maybe more docs to dive into it to figure out for you what are the right configurable apps that make sense to you and your use cases. So I mentioned ArcGIS Instant Apps. These are ones that were really, their kind of mission is to say you have 5 minutes before that meeting, you need to share information with an executive that's very, very simple. And there's a suite of a few dozen different templates to get started, whether you want to do things like, in this case, show the altitude change along trails, you want to do a quick view or things like that. Instant Apps, as the name says, is meant to be really quick to get going. ArcGIS Dashboards is that next one where it allows you to drag and drop and move components around to build what you think of as a dashboard. This can be a map with charts and tables. It can be 2 maps. It can be 3 charts. It can be really whatever you want. It's a very gridded-based approach, but it's really straightforward to get to a more customized experience. Now, these started as operations dashboards meant to be shown on huge screens in operation centers, but since then have moved to be really flexible application configuration for mobile displays, desktop displays. It's kind of amazing sometimes when you look at an configured application, you realize that it might be a way to explore a neighborhood and it's actually configured as a dashboard because that's what made sense. And again, this supports the web map specification and arcade expressions to do a lot of what you think is custom development, but really all configuration based, really no coding required. Story maps are extremely interactive, high quality ways to walk someone through a narrative. These can leverage the same data in web maps, but provide a more narrative-based approach to scroll through it. If you've ever seen the New York Times or National Geographic, those really immersive, compelling stories, that's what story maps lets you do. These can be scrollable ones, you can compare different layers together, or even create briefings, which are kind of like web-based PowerPoints. Survey 123 is a configured app if you need to gather data from different people. This is a what you see is what you get form builder. You can drag and drop out text maps, different Likert scales, all kinds of things. You can even now embed AI analysis into the survey. So you could allow a way for someone to upload a picture, and that picture can get analyzed to extract out text information that describes the picture, or have someone put information in and have that extract out different features and even update different form elements based on what was said in the voice note. So extremely powerful. All the data then are stored back in the ArcGIS platform, so it's easy to then reuse in any of the web maps or applications. And then the last of the kind of really advanced configurable apps is Experience Builder. This is you want to really build a full-fledged app with maybe multiple different pages people are going to view, high interactivity between them. Maybe you have tens of thousands of features like facilities or trees or whatever that is. You want to have one view that looks great across all of those. Experience Builder is your configurable app. This is one, it's really quick to get started, but I've been using it for years and I'm still learning and mastering all the features behind it. It's a really extremely powerful configurable app builder that, as Emily will cover, you can even build your own custom widgets if you need to. If you really need to dive into a specific external service or analytic that really it requires coding, you can do that and then embed that into the Experience Builder application so you get the benefit of the rest of the functionality. And then last, ArcGIS Hub and Enterprise sites are the same capability, just in different environments that allow you to build a website that's WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. That ties into the overall platform. You can embed things like Experience Builder applications, dashboards, ArcGIS Urban, and story maps in any of the configurable applications or even custom applications can be embedded into a hub site. And what's great about this is it creates a one location that can have multiple applications together. It has data behind the scenes. And if you ever need to swap out your configurable application, the URL will stay the same. So people can bookmark and get search engine optimization around that one URL. And then still behind the scenes, you might be able to swap out that application for a new version of it. And last thing is around ArcGIS Hub. It's really powerful as well, as often it's not just the application or applications. ArcGIS Hub and enterprise sites allow you to configure catalogs, which include multiple applications and data that can be dynamic and exposed to people based on their access control. So it's really kind of creating like the shop of all of your data and information. And if you want to explore more from federal agencies, multinational agencies, and regional agencies, you can go and see our gallery at hub.arcgis.com. Now, that's going to wrap up here for myself about how you can create configurable apps and declarative-based configuration. I'm going to now hand it off to my colleague, Emily, who's going to walk through the developer libraries.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm sharing my screen. So, hi everyone, this is Emily. I'm joining from the very lush Esri headquarters in Redlands. So from here, I'm going to cover the developer libraries. Now we're on the right side of the spectrum. Like here we open up opportunities for fully custom application development. So first, at Esri, like we have a wide range of spatial web development client technologies for you to use. It ranges from the JavaScript SDK. We have a design system. We also have great support for your open source library applications. So first, the JavaScript SDK, they have two key parts. There's a core JavaScript API that can help you build powerful and flexible applications. And there's also web components for easily integrate ArcGIS technologies into your web map. These are our premium offerings for powerful web mapping capabilities within comprehensive integration with ArcGIS. And we also have the design system that work hand in hand with the JavaScript SDK or honestly any other system. So these are resources creating user-friendly, consistent applications with accessibility in mind with the familiar ArcGIS experience. So lots of our ArcGIS products are based upon the Calcite design system, such as Map Viewer. So we can provide a consistent experience throughout our offerings. And lastly, we have great open source library support. This can give you easy integrations of ArcGIS location services into the applications that you have built in your chosen client technologies. So first, I'll go into this. Within the web developer libraries, we have components. I'll talk about that first. First is what are web components? These are encapsulated functionalities and web standard-based, meaning it can be integrated seamlessly into any framework or no framework at all. So going back to the Lego brick analogy. So if you have a basic HTML button, that's the script tag HTML. And if you have a Lego brick, that would be, you can plug in that Lego brick in any part of your web map. And you can specify which type you want, which color you want, and that's how you choose it. And if we're talking about the real world, so that could be a pre-styled button rather than the plain simple HTML button. That could be a chart, that could be a map, and also that could be an analysis component within that map. And here we're talking about the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript component. So in this example, like in the videos playing in the background, we have a complicated scene with a shadow analysis component on the upper right corner. Like when you drag and drop the shadow analysis, you can see the daylight changing. In the lower left corner, we have a base map gallery that allows you to change the base maps within clicks, and that is hidden within the span. And all of this looking very complicated. It's just these a few lines of code as I have in the lower right corner. So in this declarative way, like you can have a very interactive experience just with a few lines of code. And comparing to our legacy widget-based system, that was like it just saves so much effort, and also you are typing the way you want it to be, and that will be you're typing the way you want to be, and you can get what you want to see. And here, the item ID inside the scene is for 3D. So that is the key part of the web component-based application. So that's the item ID for your web scene or web map. If it's in the map viewer or scene viewer, it will be up here. So that's a central part to web development. As Andrew said, the styles, the base map, the interactions are saved into the web map, those configurations. And web map can be used to make instant apps, bring into Experience Builder, and the same for custom applications. You bring the web map or the web scene into your map or scene component, you plug it in, and then you will have a great canvas for any advanced activities you want to add into your web application. And that with components, you can really speed up your productivity for front-end development. So these are encapsulated functions and workflows, standard-based, supported by modern browsers, meaning there's seamless framework integration And for lots of like developers, these are a great way for them to work on it. So currently within the JavaScript SDK, we have 6 components and they're expanding by every release. The most central one is the map components package. So that includes map and scene and lots of other components with common functionalities such as legend, time sliders. These are like functions equivalent to the legacy widgets. And starting the 5.0 release in the February, we have 2 new packages. One is AI components, allow you to build agentic mapping applications so you can use natural language to interact with your web map. I'll cover that in a bit. And also common components for shared and reusable AI components for you to use with or without a map. And we also have charts component to add charts into your application, coding component that contains arcade assistant to help you test out your arcade within your application, and also embeddable map components for easy sharing to add a interactive web map into your own application into your own like a web map. It could be a web map of your whole system, and all you want is a zoomable map with like a few controls. Then you can just use the embeddable map application that will just make that process so much smoother. And diving deep into the AI components, we're very proud of that. You can interact with your map with natural language in your web mapping applications. So in this example, these are for building agentic web applications. So all of the code is just run over here. I emit some some UI structures, but you can see how simple it is. So what you need to do, you need a web map that is defined with the item ID, and you need the ArcGIS Assistant component, and you can refer the Assistant component with the ID of your web map. So in this way, the ArcGIS Assistant component will know which map you're talking about. And inside the system, we provide built-in agents for you to do your interactions. We currently have 3 built-in agents. The first is navigation. It can help you zoom in and out of the map, go to a specific area. There's built-in geocoders. And also data exploration that helps answer your what questions, such as, which county has the most wheat production in 2008? And also because we have an orchestrator, when you type your message, we will be able to understand the question and process it to call agents to help you direct to where it is. So it could be multiple at the same time. So like zooming while answering the what question. And then we also have a helper agents to help you find what kind of questions you can ask. And of course, the best part of AI is everybody can build their own custom agents. We support that as well. So if you have a specific workflow you want to work on, you can build your own custom agent and bring that into the ArcGIS Assistant component. In this way, like the system will register. The agent will register with your assistant component, and you can conversationally talk to the agent to build to provide one integrated experience. And currently, this is for organization use only, so it needs to be ArcGIS online name user. But that's the situation for now. And as I said earlier, because the web components are standard-based, it can really make your WebGIS application development really efficient. So it works with common frameworks, React, Angular, Vite, or any framework of your choice, or nothing. So in this way, like you can really speed up the productivity of front-end app development. And then besides the JavaScript components, we also have Calcite design systems. These are UI components that are built with accessibility in mind. We have a great playground for you to configure it exactly the way you want. And then there's a code button, so you can configure the color you want and color the shape, and then just copy and paste the code directly from the sandbox. There's also color themes, I think over 1,000 icons, and lots of the icons are very GIS based. So we have icons for database with multiple layers. Like that icon is hard to find in other design systems. And of course, there are documentations, tutorials, and also a built-in Figma UI kit for you to work seamlessly with your designers. And of course, it's important to apply your own branding to the application. You can change the color you want it to be. You can change how round the corner of the buttons. So we provide, as a Calcite design system provides you a lot of opportunity to customize it to fit your own design and organization aesthetics. And the Calcite components and the JavaScript components works very well hand in hand. In actual development, we use them together all the time. Calcite is great for like elements like the top left corner, and also they're great for layouts. So it's very common for us to use Calcite to build a layout and slide in the map component, like the editor inside there, and then add additional buttons, icons from the Calcite design system to have a very integrated experience that's like beautiful in and out. And moving on to the JavaScript SDK. So first of all, like JavaScript SDK powers the web applications like the instant apps, map viewer, experience builder. So for a lot of the things, you can configure it in one place, and then you can also use it directly programmatically through the JavaScript SDK. And we're proud of the fast performance. We're adding it's a 2D, 3D applications. We always add new visualization and analytics, especially client analytics capabilities to the library, and also especially for dynamic visualization. That's one of our focus in the past few years. And in addition, provides great options for workflow such as editing and table support, and the latest addition is true curve support, so you can draw your Bezier curves with the little handles. And a good part of the JavaScript SDK is our whole team is dedicated in bringing the latest web development technologies into the SDK, so you can focus on your unique workflow rather than worrying about performance. We're bringing the latest visualization technology. We're handling that part for you, so you can work on your unique workflows and applications. So besides web map, also like feature layer or hosted feature services, these are great for dynamic experience. The power is mostly in the speed and how well it handles a giant suite of features at the same time. And besides feature layer, we also provide like so many other layer types for you to bring your data from anywhere into the application. Such as like vector tile layer imagery, and a few additions. We introduced Gaussian spat layer for high resolution 3D visualization in your application, and also parquet layer. This is a great way to bring massive data set into your application. They can be you can bring that directly from Webbucket, and for lots of these layer types, they enjoy the same visualization options as feature layer. And so we provide the option for you to style them the way you want it to be. As we just talked about visualization, there's like 2D and 3D visualization. One of the latest addition we have is in 3D, we added emissive material and glow. So like the buildings can glow at dark so the windows can glow at dark, creates a very realistic environment. And also we have track rendering. We have new ways to cluster your data so that people won't be overwhelmed with the very high density applications, but it's also great for visual storytelling. Another side is client-side processing. So these are great. So these provides like great options for you to interact with your applications, like do complicated raster calculations just directly in your web application, and they're instantaneous because we're calling the in-memory spatial database that's saved in the browser. So there's a client-side querying and filtering. You can filter and query by attribute, geometry, and get statistics. In the upper right corner in that example, like you can just query the data and see the statistic as the mouse moves. And also in 3D, we introduced volume measurement analysis. That's just one of them. You can interactively see the result of your analysis just directly in the view. And then as for workflow, you can edit your data with editor. The best part of editor is we have so many advanced editing capabilities, such as editing with curves, and we have grid supports for snapping support, and all of this are built in directly into the editor widget. So all you need to call is ArcGIS editor widget, add that into your application. ArcGIS editor component, add that into your application, and boom, you can just enjoy it. And for all of the advanced configuration, you can configure that how you want to edit your data in the map viewer, save it, and then when you add the editor component into your web map, it will carry those configurations over at the same time. Also, we have a tabular exploration with feature table. That is this table in the lower right. So you can interact between the table and the map. You can add custom components into your tables to show the data in a very intuitive way. And also you can edit relative records all directly in the feature table. That's all about JavaScript SDK, and we also have great support for some open source APIs. So we currently have support for libraries, that is Leaflet, OpenLayers, MapLibre, and Cesium, covering some of the most popular 2D and 3D open source libraries. So we have great documentations for how to bring ArcGIS location services into your existing applications that's built on top of these client-side libraries. So we also have ArcGIS REST.js. That's a very simple wrapper for using location services. You can bring that into any client application or no map at all. You can just call the location services using this very lightweight REST.js library. And we have great documentation, tutorials, and samples for you to explore. And that's all for the developer libraries, and I'll pass it back to Andrew to talk more about location services and data.
Great. Thanks, Emily. I know that was a whirlwind of a lot of information, and we'll definitely have some links and resources at the end as we wrap up in a few moments. So I'm going to take this last tier, right? So we've talked about configurable applications, even building applications. Emily covered in depth all the different developer libraries and the components that are so many great ones are coming up that are really, really easy to use and get started with. But under the hood is what data and services do you have available to populate these maps and applications? Well, fortunately, as Esri, working with many of you and other partners across the world, we provide ready-to-use location services. These start with our base map services that we have dozens of ready-to-use and a community of hundreds of different base map designs. We have geocoding services and routing services, geo-enrichment services. So if you wanted to add to your features things like population, demographics, economics, etc., those can enrich your data. Different analysis services and geometry services, an elevation service, so you can see heights and along trails, roadways, and other projects, even hydrology service, and different services for offline packaging. And these are just a few. We keep adding more and more and also enriching them with more and more information and data behind the scenes. So these are things that you could just use in your application. Maybe it's the only feature in there, or it augments your data. I mentioned base maps. So we have many ready-to-use base maps, but you might have specific needs. You might need to highlight or change specific features in your base map based on your use cases. Maybe you need to augment it for certain types of trucks or trails or other features that make the most sense for your use case scenario. You can use our vector tile style editor to design your own base maps. These are very custom to your needs. They're hosted by Esri, and they are very fast and performant on web applications, mobile applications, desktop applications, and you can use in your own applications. But you definitely have your own data, and you want to pull those in from different APIs, different standards, and different data feeds. So we think of data as we often, if you're not familiar with GIS, we call them layers often. So, but these can be both spatial and non-spatial data. And that's always, I want to really highlight that because that's one of the most common questions I ever get is, but what about my table data or my tabular data or non-spatial data? ArcGIS supports that as a first class capability. You can have all the same features, even if you don't have a geometry column. We do recommend it. We think it's valuable, but you don't need it. So there are many different ways to get your data into the system. So you can upload a file and ArcGIS Online or Enterprise or Pro will help you convert that into an API. You can write scripts in Python and R or whatever language you want to use our APIs to publish that data. You can transform it using different applications and tools I'll cover in a moment to do a one-time or ongoing or continuous import of data. And lastly, we have different tools and open source libraries that allow you to have dynamic feeds and access to that data with appropriate access controls to that so that once it becomes registered as an item in the ArcGIS Online or Enterprise portals, then it becomes something that can be added or removed from any web map, web scene, or application. One of the simplest ways to get started, kind of in a no-code approach, if you have your data in other system and you want to bring it into ArcGIS and maybe even require some transformations of schema, of aggregation, simplification, anonymization, we have a great web-based enterprise application called Data Pipelines. This is something you just go and select from your ArcGIS application dropdown, and you can get going with dragging and dropping blocks to build these and schedule them to be regularly updated and connected. So you're getting the benefit of your data staying where it is, transforming that into a reusable, scaled, FedRAMP compliant services, and then make available through all the configurable applications. Now, sometimes maybe the data can't leave that system ever. They only need to be requested dynamically. Maybe the data are too large. There's certain requirements that mean that data should stay in place in that source system, and that doesn't speak a common standard like geoservices or OGC specifications. So we have two different approaches here that are the same technology. One is an open source library called Coop that you would host on your own, and another one called custom data feeds that can be deployed in ArcGIS Enterprise. The way that pattern works is you build or leverage one of our off-the-shelf or work with a partner to build a source. This is a provider that says my data are coming from some other standard, some custom API or application. It's writing just a little bit of code to translate that API into a common internal format. The custom data feed or Coop server then converts that and can be used then with different outputs. So it's kind of a dynamic translation service that you can deploy on your own and host in your own environment or deploy into enterprise that allows you to dynamically query and load data from any number of sources into any different formats. So this could be bringing the data into the ArcGIS system, so it can be made web maps and web scenes and applications. It could even be exposing it to other third-party applications from ArcGIS or from that third-party service. But it's part of the whole platform. It's part of that extensibility model that we've designed into the whole system to make it easy for you to bring your data and information from where it is into our system and then carry that back out to wherever it needs to go. So last thing I want to cover here is we've covered a lot of different technologies. And usually when we've given this presentation in the past, we've kind of stopped there. But we want to take a moment and give you kind of a first glimpse in terms of some of our recommendations and strategies for starting to build not just AI into your applications, but building with AI. Now, I think as many of us know, it's a rapidly emerging practice. The technology is evolving, even the use of that and the governance by different organizations is varying. So this is not going to dive into those really important aspects, but at least some of our first pass recommendations is as you're exploring or able to adopt the use of AI tooling into your coding and testing, here's just some practices. So we're going to simplify this as 4 different patterns of web development with AI. The first, the one that people talk about for now several years, is vibe coding. This is a term that just means that you're quickly talking and having it generate code for you. Then the next step to evolve and mature that is specifications or spec prompts. Then project specifications, which is maybe something that many of us have been doing before, but they were separated. The specifications were often some other knowledge management tool, and then we're coding on somewhere else. Now you can bring those two things together. And then where it's going, I'm not going to really talk about this now, and work that we've been talking at our Dev Tech Summit is the use of what's called MCP, or Model Context Protocol specifications in different agents. So this is definitely rapidly emerging, and every week I personally even am wowed and figuring out what it is, and just pointing this out as something where it's going. So one thing that's really important here about what we believe that AI is going to really help in the future over these is that it works dramatically better with a well-architected platform. So you can go to architecture.arcgis.com and see how our architecture is designed and built ourselves and how you can build and scale yours. The nice thing is it's all documented, so AI tools can leverage that, know a well-architected system that we just described for you, and it can provide really well-architected components very quickly for you to test, customize, and configure as you need to. So just to summarize these, vibe coding, it gets you a demo. It's what you've maybe explored on your own, right? And it's not great. I'm going to say that up front, but it kind of works, right? You can just say, build me a web app showing a map of Seattle's forest trees with a sidebar listing species and search box, make it look professional. You're probably going to get one of these open source tools that Emily highlighted, which is great, Leaflet or Map Libre, because that's what a lot of the training data are based on. But it's not going to be really maintainable over time. We recommend starting to write specifications. These are really just taking text versions of what we just covered for you. It's use the ArcGIS Maps SDK 5, load that via CDN, use web components, don't use widgets, use Calcite, and so on. By documenting these in natural language markdown, if you're using some of the newer AI tooling, it will leverage this to help you make decisions. If you ask for application features, it will bring these functional technical requirements in for how it recommends the code. Now, that doesn't scale perfectly because it's still having to copy those around. So what you're starting to see, and this is the last thing I'll highlight here as kind of a quick part of our overture, is that you're going to want to start thinking about agents, whether they're called agents, markdown files. Claude has specific format as well, but really it's just a pattern of documenting more in-depth detail of the technical requirements and the functional requirements of your application. And increasingly, if you want to go look out there and watch different videos on spec-driven development, it's a rapidly emerging practice where you are clearly defining your requirements, you're bringing in different governance practices on accessibility and usability and terminology. And then as you're updating those specifications, the AI agents will actually start generating code. They'll generate tests to help validate those things. It's still your responsibility to always test and verify that code, but these are practices that are emerging to rapidly accelerate your development, follow best practices, and build in durability and maintainability for many years to come. And there'll be more. We're going to be talking about this as Esri over the coming months and years as the technology and practices emerge. So that was a lot. We're going to wrap up. And I know this is a big overture, and I know there were a lot of questions already popping up, and we'll have time as well to dive into these that you're wondering about, okay, how does this come together? Where can I dive in? So I want to summarize with two different approaches for you to think about here about as you're building your system is really understanding the whole platform and what you can do to leverage. So first, I'm going to X-ray into a moment of what this tiered architecture actually looks like, covering all the different little pieces, all the Lego pieces that we covered for you, right? So we have this three-tiered architecture of web services and data with developer libraries and components to declarative configuration-based applications. So what does this actually mean with what we just covered for you, right? So your data can live in ArcGIS online or enterprise hosted services, upload a CSV, publish from Pro, write a script. You can get into those services, and with an ArcGIS Alliance, all FedRAMP moderate. It's all scaled for you automatically. We just take care of those things so you can rest easy and focus on your mission. You can also still use ArcGIS Server if you need to have a standalone system and service that still speaks to those specifications, or we can pull in different standards out there like OGC, GeoJSON, and even CSV directly. Now, those come into what we generally refer to as the portal, ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online. Those are registered as items of type layer. And then you bring those together as necessary into a web map or web scene, a 3D view of that. You can use Arcade to augment the display or analysis of those layers, and that itself becomes an item. And each of these items can have their own metadata. They can be shared as appropriate with different users, groups, organizations, or the public. If you really need to go custom with your data, you can use custom data feeds, or you can use ArcGIS notebooks or your other scripting tools to create those layers. Once you do that, we recommend that you create a configurable app right away using one of the many examples that we showed you to really set expectations, talk about requirements, set up a prototype, and then embed that into a hub site. That becomes the durable URL you might update and change over time with new applications and new data, but you set that expectation right now so people can go and view it there. And then as you want to spend more time, energy, and money with your staff and your partners, you can then go and load that exact same web map that's using authoritative data and styling into custom applications, leveraging the same experience builder widgets and web components that Emily showed you to build that custom application or custom components, and then embed that into the site, whether it's an additional application or replaces the one that was there. It's kind of a automatic, it's a switch that is transparent to those users. So this is kind of now we've showed you all the pieces, how it comes back together into a comprehensive system that it's how we build our applications and how you can too. And as I mentioned, kind of towards the end, we are bringing GeoAI and skills into all of these different capabilities that they're going to help you with it. And there's assistance across the whole platform. There's assistance for creating Python notebooks. There's assistance for arcade expressions. There's assistance for styling, for configuring apps, for search, and so on. I'm aware of dozens of different assistants that we have or are building out, and you can go search those as well. And then you can build your own also. So we're exposing out our AI assistant components that you can build yourselves. We're exposing out different agent builder tools. We're also going to be exposing out different skills that we've built, but you can build yourself in the future. So this is kind of a rapidly emerging set of new Lego pieces that are going to show up in the system that you'll be able to use, ready to use, or extend and build on your own. So to summarize the strategies, as I just said, you want to configure web maps and web scenes. We do recommend that you use the ArcGIS identity. You can use third-party systems, but using the identity is something that's already there for you. It can tie into SAML and LDAP and Active Directory right away, and it provides you really good access-based control to capabilities and data. And then use the portal items for the storage and sharing uses declarative JSON approach. The data can be published as hosted feature services, and you can integrate with custom APIs with custom data feeds and pipelines. For apps, rapidly prototype with configurable apps, extend with experience builder widgets, and then embed those in hubs so they're easy to find and maintain. And then, as I've said, to wrap this up, is you can reuse the JavaScript Map SDK components that we have or follow our patterns to build your own. This is a standard called web components. You can use lit elements and other frameworks to build your own components following the same modern interoperable strategy as we've provided. And you can bring Calcite components and even the ArcGIS components into those composite components. And then you can visualize with our JavaScript Maps SDK, which is the best in the world. And then you can leverage different open source libraries as you need to, as it might need to integrate with, say, legacy applications or different use cases. This was very fast and covered a lot of information, but we found it's very useful for someone to have a comprehensive picture. As any question came up about, well, how do I do this? Or what about that? We have at least 2 great websites I would say bookmark right away, as well as many other ones. The ArcGIS developers website is tremendous from all of our developer applications, and specifically the JavaScript site within that provides really great tutorials for maps, charts, analysis, and so on to really dive into very specific walkthroughs and workflows of the different capabilities that we just highlighted to you. We also publish out our Dev Tech and other conference sessions. So I saw the 2025 sessions are up now. I think there's 138 videos, each about an hour or so long on a variety of different topics. And these are presented by the people who actually build the technology that you can use. And I'm sure the 2026 ones will be coming up soon, which are often a lot of the same technology, just with new updates and new patterns. So if you want to go and find out more and watch a video, go check out our media space or check out the developer site for hands-on walkthrough coding tutorials. So I hope all of this inspired you. I hope as you look at the different tutorials and each other's work that you're inspired by one another, because it's amazing what you can build with just simple building blocks that all work together. Now that we've shown you how it works, we've pulled apart the system. Hopefully you can start thinking in yourself, how I might start pulling them back together and build some quick configurable apps, dive into widgets, maybe even start pulling some AI tooling to really help you accelerate that workflow. So get creative, build something that didn't exist before. And as you do, we're always open. Please join our Esri community, ping us online or stop by one of our conferences as you can. And we'd love to see what you've built. With that, I want to thank you. I really appreciate everyone's time and all of your work. And I think we have a few minutes for questions.
We do. Thanks, Andrew. Thank you so much. Just a note, those Dev and Tech Summit videos that Andrew was referring to from 2026 will be available to you through excuse me, through Esri Video, and also our proceedings page May 15th. So you'll want to mark your calendar for that. That'll be very exciting for you to have. So we're now going to go ahead and address some of the questions that were submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions. There's a Q&A tool at the very bottom of your Zoom menu at the bottom there. So feel free to submit there. We're happy to address those. So one of the first questions that came, a lot of questions came about the tutorials and getting started. So I think, Andrew, thank you so much for addressing that and helping to have those resources available for everyone. Really very helpful. One of the first questions that came in was, how does the JavaScript SDK compare to Experience Builder Developer Edition? Does Esri recommend using one over the other for certain cases, or how would you recommend the approach to that?
Okay, great question. I'll take that. So first of all, there are both products from Esri, and we will recommend one over another in general, but they do fit for different use cases. So first of all, for the Experience Builder Developer Edition, that allows you to build your custom widgets to extend your Experience Builder experience. So in that way, first of all, it requires besides basic web development, it requires the knowledge of a few other libraries. First of all, one of them is called the GMU UI library. The other is the React framework. So I think these are it's better to have these knowledge for you to build a custom widgets for the Experience Builder library, to build Experience Builder custom widgets. So with that knowledge, so it is a great way if you already have a lot of existing Experience Builder experiences and you want to extend that with just one simple custom widgets that can help with making your application like so much easier to use, add additional knowledge. You can then use the developer edition to build on that one small custom widget. And also, since when you build one custom widget, you can apply them to multiple experiences. So that really helps when you have a lot of experiences in your organization for different purposes. And you all want to extend them with that one functionality. It could be item browser, could be integration with your own custom database, then you can apply that same custom widgets into multiple experiences. So I think these are great use cases for using the developer edition of Experience Builder. But at the same time, as I said, because it requires knowledge of GMU and React framework, so that's a little bit higher entry point than using JavaScript library directly. So with JavaScript, especially with the web introduction of web components, a lot of the development are easier and you don't have to stick with a specific framework such as React. So that could be easier for some of your development. And also, if you go to the full custom route, it can help you like hook up with lots of your data from different sources. You can have the interactions the way you want, so you are not restricted to a certain part of the Experience Builder functionality. So yes, so just in general, the Experience Builder Developer Editions and the JavaScript, they are two different products. Their underlying technology is the underlying technologies are both the JavaScript SDK. So it's just for different situations, you can pick and choose the route you want to be. And we see plenty of examples of people, they started with developer edition and they wanted to go fully custom, or they have a fully custom application. Then we realize, they want to build one custom widgets and to apply to their many experiences. So they go the other route. So it doesn't need to be one or the other. You can utilize both. And also you can build your own standard-based web components that can be used in many of your custom applications built on the JavaScript SDK. Andrew?
Okay. Andrew, did you want to share anything you were showing here? This is for the question.
Yeah, what Emily was saying, this is where you can go and find all the details about what Emily was saying. I was just showing it.
Okay, great. I think we have time for one question. I did see a question of does the hydrology service provided include the new 3D HP data being published by the USGS?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. I have an inclination, but I wouldn't want to say it authoritatively. So I feel like that's one we can maybe follow up and
Sure.
I'll post that information out with what the current status is and what the plans are.
Okay, will do. All right. Well, thank you, Andrew and Emily, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Strategies for Web Development. If you have any additional questions about this webinar, we encourage you to post them in our Esri community user forums for developers. We included a link in the chat a bit earlier as where you can do that. And there may be others who have similar questions, so feel free to do so. You will also be receiving a follow-up email about this webinar, and feel free to respond to that as well if you have any additional questions. We will have a recording placed on the landing page for this webinar, which was also included in the chat there. So you can check that, and it'll be ready in about 7 to 10 business days. On behalf of Esri and our presenters today, we thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day. Thank you all.